So welcome everybody to a talk on natural menopause, which is a growing topic. It was only sometime last year, or within the last 18 months, that the hashtag natural menopause had a few hundred entries. Now it's got thousands, which is very exciting to me. And thank you for joining us tonight. And this is me, Caroline Gaskin, and my colleague Fiona Eadie. So we're going to start today just by introducing ourselves, because there'll be quite a few of you, I'm sure, who have no idea who we are and what we do. And there'll be some of you who are old friends that we love to see. Hi, Helen. You're one of the old friends. So I'm going to ask you, Fiona, to introduce yourself, talk about how you got into homeopathy and how you got into, because we're both homeopaths, and how you got into working with hormones and menopause.
Thanks, Caroline. So hi, everybody. As Caroline said, my name's Fiona Eadie, and yeah, I am a homeopath, and I work primarily in women's health, and specifically in menopause. And the way that all started for me was that when I became a homeopath, I realized that a lot of the clients that I was working with were quite sort of nutritionally depleted, that there was more work to be done than just dealing with the immediate condition that they were presenting with. And that got me really interested in the worlds where nutrition and homeopathy meet and how they can support each other. And I really fell down a rabbit hole with nutrition, and went off trained, and it's an ever evolving field. And nutrition actually is a field where there's a lot of new science that comes out all of the time, and where in a way traditional medicine or Western medicine is kind of catching up with what's happening in the functional health space and in the nutrition space. And it works so beautifully with homeopathy to get much better results for clients. And then my work with women was really, I started off with women as my friends, who were the people that I kind of trained with and were my original clients. And then just through word of mouth and referrals, that became my cohort. And through working with women, obviously, what came up more and more as the women were, very sort of similar age group to me, was specializing in menopause, and really sort of seeing this trajectory that women would go on round about, heading off, sort of presenting with the condition. Say they've got rheumatoid arthritis, and then not really realizing that they're in menopause, and going to their GPs and not getting an awful lot of information, and then popping down to Holland and Barrett and buying something with menopause written on it, and saying, oh well, I've tried natural now and that didn't work, and really being at a bit of a loss. And what I find is that homeopathy and nutrition actually get fantastic results for women who want to have a natural menopause. And now with myself, I'm actually in perimenopause now. I'm kind of at the late stages of perimenopause, and it surprised me. I don't think I was as well prepared for it as I thought. And I was, when I first started getting symptoms of exhaustion was my first one, and then my libido crashed. But was that linked to my exhaustion? And then I started getting hot, and then my periods started changing. But I had a whole load of symptoms before my periods actually started changing. So even I didn't really realize that I was in perimenopause. And I had to kind of acknowledge where I was at, and I had to start working with myself. And I really realized that menopause is kind of a bit of it's a wake-up call, and it really shows you where you've been. It shows you where the gaps are in your own self-care, and it shows you where the gaps are and what you need to do. So for me, my particular issues are around about working far too hard, having lots of stress, and carrying a lot of stuff around about my family. I know that this is very common to lots of women. So when you start getting tired, I just thought that was part of the sort of all over picture of my life stage. But But what I started to realize was that when I started applying some of my own advice to myself around about nutrition, around about what I needed to eat, when I needed to eat, making sure that I prioritized my own meals instead of just kind of eating the leftovers from the night before, or making sure that my son had like a really amazing lunchbox for school, but not, you know, sorting out my own. And when I realized that I needed to start doing this work and sort of plugging my own nutritional and health gaps, then I saw the symptoms really start to sort of move away. And I think that what's been really useful for me to see is that it's not just for the clients that I work with, but for me personally, is that when I started to change my self-care, that I put these new habits into place. And I know that these habits are now embedded and they're going to stay with me for the next, you know, 30, 40, 50 years. And that they feel great and it feels fantastic to, you know, feel really well and really strong, which wasn't something I expected at all in menopause. It wasn't, you know, at all what the media tells us. It wasn't what my friends were telling me. But yet though I did find with my clients or with people like Caroline that there were women who were saying, no, this is like great. And what I really find now is that weirdly, find myself that I'm actually fitter than I've ever been, you know, definitely through my 30s, 40s. I feel a lot stronger. I do, you know, I sort of exercise appropriately and I eat well, and that makes me feel physically strong. And I've also loved the whole journey of really getting to know myself over this menopause journey, and working with my emotions and what's been, you know, a lot of stuff comes off that's been hanging around in the background that I haven't really faced. I think there's a lot of things, a lot of the time at menopause, women can experience something that can happen for them at puberty, for example, because at puberty we can often feel very unsafe and be very, you know, sort of thrust out into the world on our own. And then we move into a reproductive space and we get all this estrogen and we sort of put all those problems aside. And those come back up at menopause for us. They come up and they kind of catch us out. And so there's a really fantastic piece of work around about really looking at your emotional state at menopause and sort of thinking, what do I need for myself? I am much more anxious than I thought. And that kind of change in hormones starts to reveal those things. So there's a huge sort of getting to know oneself journey that I've really enjoyed, and I know I'm going to benefit from for years to come. And I think that's really what the way that I work with my clients is, that menopause is actually a really exciting transitional period, a really fantastic change. If you know how to work with the symptoms and if you know how to embrace those symptoms and sort of read into them, look at the triggers and find out what's working for you, what's not working for you. And then you get to go on the journey that you need to go on and pop out the other side. And I know that Caroline, who is, you know, a few years older than me, quite a few years older than me, sort of different point. But Caroline, could you share with us a little bit about your work and how you work with women at menopause?
Sure. And there's so many things that you've said that really echo for me. And I wanted to start sort of, I suppose, straight away with where I am now, which is I am 10 years post-menopause and I just had a holiday. And I did one of those holidays that I haven't had in years, which is literally lying on a sunbed, going for a swim, reading books and hanging out with a really good friend for a few days in Greece. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And one of the things that I discovered, I've always swum, but one of the things that I discovered is my front crawl is probably the strongest it has ever been in my whole life. I mean, I was really shocked. Front crawl is something that as a swimming stroke, we all have to learn how to do it. It doesn't necessarily come naturally, but it wasn't my favorite one. I always would get out of breath. And there I was just plowing on each day. I challenged myself to go a bit further. And I was like, I'm 62. I love where I'm at. I'm post-menopause, you know, and before menopause, I was in a very kind of wobbly place as I went into perimenopause. And I just want to share a little bit about my my own journey. And I'm just going to do this with a screen share because that's where we started when we did this talk previously. And there's quite a few of you who are completely new to the space. So I just thought let's introduce a little bit about me and what I've been doing in my life and how I got into this. Like many women, I got into homeopathy through having my children. So many women get into making healthcare choices at times of hormonal change. And at that point in my life, we chose a home birth. We ate home cooked food. We filtered our water, which was pretty novel in those days. And Fiona and I were just chatting the other day about a new study about fluoride and how important it is to get that rubbish out of your water, because it really affects almost every system in the body. So we started filtering our water all those years ago, and I've never stopped. I took up yoga when I was pregnant with my son, and it stayed with me as a touchstone for stress. Baked bread, read books about child-led parenting, and after being prescribed a sedative for our son, we chose homeopathy as our first port of call for our family's health needs, because at 4 months old, I was not going to give him a sedative. And the reason I started with all of this is because I was doing all of these things for years and years and years. And when I got into menopause, it was a shock, as Fiona said, that, wow, I actually need to do more. I need to hone what I know in order to navigate menopause. And I'll show you why in a minute, without resorting to medication. And the signs for me needing that medication were there all along. And that hadn't manifested and become obvious because most health practitioners are not trained to look at that. So that's quite a shock. You know, that's your GP, your complementary therapist is not trained in hormones, not trained in hormonal change, and not trained in thyroid, which was showing me all along it needed some attention. So when my kids went to school, I took a foundation course in homeopathy, which feels like a long time ago now, but so much of that is imprinted on my brain and I put into practice every day in my work. I'm a full-time homeopath. And I worked at the Active Birth Centre doing their press and PR while I was training. So I was able to talk about complementary therapy to the press, which was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved that time in my life. And I started training with Robert Davidson at the College of Practical Homeopathy, went on to practice in 2000. So I've been doing this for 25 years now and started to teach homeopathy a few years into my practice. And I've taught at all sorts of places all over the world and still teach, thoroughly enjoy that side of my work. And then along came perimenopause. And at 42, I got my first signs that something was amiss. Actually, what was happening to me is my blood sugar was out of balance. And this is extremely common, and nobody's talking about what's actually happening at perimenopause. And for the vast majority of women, it's out of balance blood sugar, which can manifest as anxiety, feeling a bit off, feeling like you're not quite connected, you know, and homeopathy at that point in time set it right. But at 46, I was going through a really stressful period of time. And this is very, very common for women in menopause. Kids doing GCSEs and A-levels, partners away a lot, you taking on more responsibility at work, elderly parents needing support. I was working hard, and without even noticing, I'd fallen into eating vegan and eating on the go. And I did a test with a friend. It's eLibra, which is a bioresonance program, because I was suddenly crashing in my energy in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock. And I was like, what is going on? I'd been on 2 yoga retreats and I was like, felt really tired after them. I was like, what is going on? So I did this test and it showed that I wasn't metabolizing protein efficiently. Now, the thyroid looks after the metabolic processes in the body, helps us make protein. We're 90% protein. And that was really failing for me. And so I really needed to look at that. The blood test showed that my thyroid was really low. It showed that my cholesterol was high. These two things often go hand in hand. I was never taught that. I had to learn that. And I wasn't metabolizing protein sufficiently. So how was I going to do this without dipping into, you know, thyroxine, mainstream medication? I didn't want to do that. So I had to change my diet, as Fiona said. I had to attend to eating protein regularly in order to rebuild my thyroid. Started to have to use superfoods as well as my homeopathy to really rebuild my thyroid. And I did it. I've come through the other side. I've had tests. It shows as strong. And I've now got the tools that I need if my thyroid starts to show me that there's an issue. Now, back then, I was getting waves of tiredness. I didn't recognize them at all as thyroid, didn't know that. And I was shedding hair. So now if I get certain symptoms, if I get any sensation, I'm like straight back to my remedies, checking in with my diet, checking in that I've got those things in place that keep my body stable and that will keep my body stable for the rest of my life. So what you learn now at this point in menopause is going to inform you as Fiona said, for the next 30, 40, maybe 50 years, depending on what the genetic code is for you in your family. So as I said, I wasn't trained in menopause. So much of what I've learned has been learned in the last 15 years. I wasn't trained in thyroid pathology. So many people have thyroid issues, and there are many factors environmentally and in our personal timelines that affect thyroid function. So I started my own workshops, I spoke at conferences, I talked at Homes for Haringey in early 2020, and I was really surprised by all the women that came up to me afterwards. Now, if you know Haringey in North London, it has a very different demographic to some other areas of London. So there were women from the Middle East, from the Eastern Mediterranean, and the Afro-Caribbean communities. And I realized that they were doing menopause with different symptoms to me and many of my friends, and that they needed a different kind of information and support. So it really switched me on. It was a really key reminder 20 years into my practice that I needed to continue to work with women's health, that I needed to continue to work with hormonal change, allowing women, helping women to create hormonal balance and manage menopause naturally. And then so I started, because we were right in the pandemic, with the online learning space. And that really became a very rich space. Really a lot of amazing transformation in the group space was going on, which I really welcome compared to perhaps some of my one-to-one work. And I'm still learning. It's a constant process, and I love that. It's fascinating. So I'm just going to stop the share there. And Fiona, I was going to ask you about, I know there's an aspect of your work which fascinates me, which I don't do, because obviously we talk about homeopathy a lot together. And I might refer women for tests, and there are lots of tests that can help at menopause. But I wanted to ask you about the Dutch test that you work with specifically.
Yeah, great. Dutch testing is a functional medicine test, and it's nothing to do with the Netherlands. It is a dry urine test. That's the Dutch part. So dry urine test, and you do it at home over a 24-hour period. And I think that's what's the first thing about it that's interesting, because if you look at an NHS sex hormone test, which could be looking at estrogen or progesterone or testosterone, it is a one-shot test, and your results, so something like estrogen or progesterone, can change by 200% in the same day. So if you get your test done at 11 in the morning compared to if you get your test done at 4 at night, you will get a test that can be so dramatically out of range or in range depending at the time you took it. And then if you have another test in a few months' time to see what's happening, but this time you have it again at another time of day, you get a completely, crazy result, which is why often your GP, if you do go in perimenopause and say, what's going on, can you test my hormones? They will say, no, there's no point. We can't tell anything from the tests. And also, the fantastic thing about the Dutch test is that not only does it tell you what your sex hormones are doing, but it shows you what the impact of stress is, what the impact of having no sleep, what's happening with your neurotransmitters, and what's happening with vitamin deficiencies. And so the way that this is really useful, I'll just give you an example of 2 clients I had, both presented with the same symptoms. So both of these women were perimenopausal, they were exhausted, totally exhausted, no energy, burnt out, quite emotionally vulnerable, you know, upset, snappy, and they're both having a lot of unexplained weight gain that didn't really tally with what they were eating and the way they were eating. So they're eating well, and yet they're really, you know, in one of their words, sort of piling on the pounds. And what Dutch showed, which is information that just isn't going to come from anywhere else, is that one of the women actually had hardly any testosterone. And when you've got very low testosterone, your muscle turns very quickly to fat. And so you get unexplained weight gain. You also have no va-va-voom, no get up and go, no libido. You're not very, you know, it's a hormone that we associate with ambition and drive. And when that goes, you feel pretty terrible. So she got a fantastic treatment plan with homeopathy, testosterone boosting herbs, teas, some lifestyle adjustments, because when you know, your testosterone goes, you need to start putting that muscle back on, because your muscle actually sort of fuels your testosterone levels. So she had to kind of step back into her power when she started feeling better. And fantastic treatment plan. I actually only saw her once after that, and she didn't need to come back again, and everything started going in the right direction. And I also have to say, she did have an awful lot. The underlying reason behind it all was this huge grief that she'd been carrying for years, and hadn't dealt with. So that had to be dealt with as well. And that's one of the things that homeopathy is fantastic at working with. And then the second client, exactly the same symptoms, the tiredness, weight gain, low mood, no libido. And her test results came back and they were completely different. And they actually showed that her adrenal glands, so her adrenal glands massively affect your sex hormones. The amount of, every time you get stressed and you produce cortisone, you actually steal the ingredients that you need to produce your progesterone. And progesterone makes you feel lovely and happy. So if you're stressed all the time, you don't feel lovely and happy. You lose this relaxed feeling. And cortisone makes it incredibly difficult to lose weight, because your body is hanging on to that weight because it needs it, because you're in a state of emergency. So her treatment plan was completely different. Her treatment plan was, you know, around about relaxation. It was supporting sleep, you know, at all costs, and then loads of adrenally nourishing foods, adrenally nourishing teas, homeopathy for your adrenal glands. And again, she had a deeper underlying picture of a lot of stress that had been there for many years over bringing up you know, a child with complex neurodivergent needs. So she was really worn out. And again, a fantastic result. And I think I would just encourage anybody who has got chronic health issues at menopause that you can't get to the bottom of, or menopause symptoms that aren't shifting, post-menopause or pre-menopause, roundabout, you know, anything happening with your periods, I would really encourage you to go and get a Dutch test. And so much, when I see the information coming in from these Dutch tests, what has happened is that it's completely changed my view of menopause. We're told this story as menopause being a time of lack of estrogen and progesterone. And yes, it is, but those hormones actually go to the perfect level because we're not ovulating anymore, so we don't need very much. And what Dutch shows that more often than not is it's not actually a problem with the production of these hormones. It's often how we break them down and excrete them. So often women have, you know, like estrogen that's just circulating because they're not breaking it down properly. Their liver just isn't strong enough. And that's where the work needs to go. So what I see from Dutch testing is a lot of really useful information about how to treat all women at menopause, that there are essentials that many of us need as we are in midlife, and perhaps our livers have taken a little bit of, they've taken some toll. There are emotional supports we need. And there is a universality in what women need at menopause. And I think one of the biggest things is roundabout stress. It's really so much more, has so much more of an impact on our sex hormones and our menopause than you could possibly imagine. Yeah, so that's my call for improved hormonal testing in the NHS as well. It'd be great if that was available on the NHS.
Yeah, it would be incredible, wouldn't it? I mean,
yeah.
I just wanted to come back briefly with the concept, because for me for the last several years, and I've run groups of cleansing, and when I look at what's in the green superfoods, it is the reason why women feel so good when they cleanse is because we're toning the liver, we're allowing the liver to detox efficiently from all those excess hormones. And when I look at the ingredients of those, we've got things like some of the brassicas, which can really help us metabolize the estrogen more efficiently. So just sometimes it's something very simple, like including something in your diet regularly, that really makes massive change. And then understanding how that food is absorbed and made more bioavailable to your body. And I just wanted to ask you briefly in there, or just sort of to state really that, what the Dutch test looks at compared to the kind of tests that you'll have at the doctor, which are only blood tests, which aren't an efficient way to really get a true hormone picture, is the Dutch test will also look at other hormones like DHEA, which is a precursor to us making some of the other sex hormones, and without which we will also find that we gain weight. So it could be a whole kind of cascade that's happening, if when we're out of balance. And I find also that in that space, what happens to an awful lot of women is they go to the doctor and they say, I'd like to have a blood test, have my hormones done, and they don't get adequate hormones tested. It's even if they get that test from the doctor, they don't get adequate hormones tested. And the way that the tests are done, the blood test, is not an efficient way to really test the hormones. So we're really underserved by a system that just doesn't understand what we need at this point in our lives. And I just wanted to point that out because I get asked about this a lot, and so many women come in with blood tests which frankly are useless. So when we go to something like the Dutch test, there are other tests we can look at for food metabolic rate. They really do help and inform us for a long period of time about what it is we need to do to create a healthy plan going forward.
Yeah. And someone's just asked in the chat box, what exactly is the Dutch test? So it's a dried urine test that's taken over a 24-hour period, which you do at home, and it's paper strips. So you pee on paper strips, all of them over 24 hours. And then the lab aggregates those results together so you can get a picture of what's happening to your hormones as they move over 24 hours. And that's particularly important for your stress hormones, which do all sorts of stuff during the night and to wake you up in the morning. And the reason it tests your urine is that testing your urine is like testing the exhaust of the car to see what's happening in the engine. You can see how much hormone you're using, how much you're throwing away, and how much is coming out in your urine in an unbroken down state. So you can see from the urine not only how much you're producing, but if anything is going wrong in that in-between process of your body using it up. Is it using it up successfully? And is it using it up in the right way? And that's really useful information. And it's very useful information for anyone considering HRT or on HRT. It's really important to understand how well you're dealing with estrogen, because if you're not breaking down estrogen properly, it can be really toxic to the body, as in it can change the DNA and is linked into cancers like breast cancer. So particularly anyone on HRT, I would encourage you to get that test.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to put in there, because so many women on HRT aren't being checked regularly. And they are on inappropriate doses. And I see an awful lot of women with symptoms that really should be brought back into balance and are as a result of the HRT that they're taking. So there's a couple more questions that have come in here, and I think it's good to focus on this. So Katrin says, does HRT skew the results from the Dutch test? And in a way, you said you should do the Dutch test even if you're on HRT. But yeah, how does that, does it skew the results? Well, it shows you what's there, doesn't it?
Yeah, when you get the test sent to your home, it comes with a questionnaire, and you fill in how much estrogen, progesterone, testosterone you're taking, and then the lab will look at what your levels are and look at the dose you're taking, and we'll see what you're doing with that dose. So, for example, I've had somebody who was repeatedly going to her GP and felt terrible and was being told to take another squirt of estrogen each time. It was a spray. She started off on 1, and by the time she came to see me, she was on 6 per day. Her estrogen levels were so far out of range. They were out of range. There's a range that HRT should push you to, and they were nearly double that. So every time she was going back, it was actually the huge dose of estrogen she was on that was causing her problems. And if no one is testing for that, there is no way to know what level you're at and when you should stop. And everyone's different. A woman, depending on your weight, you will naturally produce in your cells, our cells, not just our ovaries, loads of our cells produce estrogen. And if you're overweight, you'll produce more. So you really need to bear that in mind if you're taking HRT. Yeah, but there are, as Caroline, there are tons of ways to deal with menopause naturally. And that's why I think we're here. We're here to really talk about ways to support your hormones naturally.
A little question, I guess, if you could just very quickly answer, but it just says, how can it tell you about neurotransmitters, please? Someone asked. I just shared a little thing about dopamine and oxytocin, etc. I think I'm sharing it tomorrow in my group. You know, what can boost and support those neurotransmitters, but how does it show that?
That again, it basically kind of captures everything it can that's relevant in your urine. You can't test everything in urine. For example, it doesn't pick up thyroid. Thyroid has to be tested in blood, but they kind of capture everything they can. So they look at your neurotransmitters and they can see what levels of neurotransmitters you're producing and breaking down as part of the test. So it's kind of bundled in there, but it's incredibly interesting because you will see where people have got cortisone that perhaps is flat, you know, they're burned out or their cortisone is going all over the place. You will see that how much their neurotransmitters are impacted. And from that, there are very simple, again, herbal homeopathic supports that you can work with because that can be a big part of menopause as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And things that inhibit us making the neurotransmitters, you know, can be fundamental to sorting out sleep problems, for instance, you know, so sometimes it comes back to the gut as well. And that's something that, you know, both Fiona and I are keen on looking at is, you know, the state of the microbiome and how if we, you know, if we can enhance I mean, I talk about this all the time with menopause. If we can diversify and enhance the microbiome, then we're going to absorb nutrients from the food that we're currently eating. So without changing what we're currently eating, we often need to somehow access the nutrients in that food more efficiently. Now, homeopathy will help us do that for a starter. You know, we can start with things like some of the tissue salts. They will help us absorb nutrients more efficiently, and we can diversify the gut flora so that we absorb those nutrients more efficiently. We can choose to eat foods that make the nutrients in food more bioavailable to us. You know, all of these are, you might call them biohacks. All of these are, you know, fundamental to kind of have in our lives to navigate the 21st century and menopause. So somebody asked, do we have key recommendations for key diet and nutrient supplement advice most women would benefit from during menopause? So I just shared one of them, which is fermented foods, you know, diversifying the gut flora. And there may be ways in which we need to drill down and look at that more, you know, more specifically, depending on how symptoms manifest, you know. And one of the things that I think we, you know, both clear on is that there are many generalities about menopause. You know, there are many things that we could say are general. So I'm going to do a bit of a screen share, but, you know, many things that are general to menopause, but there's also, how is that for you? You know, so anything that afterwards I'll go through the chat and anything that we haven't answered, you know, sort of specifically, I can, let me just get the right screen up. Here we go.
That should be taken during any specific point of your menstrual cycle.
Yes, that's great. Yeah.
If you're ovulating, then the test is taken a couple of days after ovulation. And if you're not ovulating anymore, you can either be in menopause of 12 months of not having a period, take it on any day. And if you have a really irregular period, then you do need to do an extra step to try and identify when you're ovulating. And if you're not ovulating but not in menopause. There's something else you can do. So there are different routes through it, depending on where you are in your menopause journey.
Yeah. So when I share the Watch Again link, if there's sort of extra questions in there that we haven't answered, we can point you in the right direction. But for a long time I've used the stat there are 34 symptoms of menopause, and of course you will go on the internet. I use Ecosia, not Google, but I will Ecosia it, and I'll find somebody saying no, there's 90 symptoms, and we could drill down to many more symptoms than we've listed here. These are the most common symptoms that we associate with menopause, but it appears not all women have hot flushes, not all women suffer fatigue, not all women suffer from irregular periods. Sometimes they just stop. I think one of the misconceptions around menopause is that it's always going to be a process. There are situations where women are very suddenly plunged into menopause, and that can come from trauma, extreme stress, or obviously something like surgery, or what is commonly being called chemical menopause, where somebody, because of usually a pre-existing condition, a woman is put onto some kind of hormone blocker to prevent more estrogen flooding through the system. Whereas, as you can hear from mine and Fiona's perspective, we like to encourage women to metabolize whatever estrogen is in their life more efficiently, and to look at where there might be things like phyto plant estrogens or xenoestrogens in the diet or the environment. So while we've got these commonalities, we're looking at how is it for you? So if you ask me about my hot flushes, they'll be different to the next woman's hot flushes, but apparently half of us have hot flushes. So there are commonalities, but we as homeopaths particularly, and most, complementary health practitioners will be asking, how is it for you? And be looking a little bit more specifically. So something like poor concentration, I might be asking, is it about focus? Is it about concentration? Is it about memory? Tell me about your brain fog. And I'm constantly learning. One of the things that I learned in the last 2 weeks is that as bones break down, heavy metals that the body may have stored in the bones will be released into the system. That could be the cause of brain fog, because the effect of heavy metals in the system, one of the effects is brain fog. So it was kind of news to me when I saw that as bones break down, that means osteopenia, and the bone structure begins to change, we can release heavy metals. If they've been stored in the system doesn't know what to do with them, can put them into the bones. So I did a cleanse. I talked about the cleanse. I did a cleanse in the summer of 2019. I had the most phenomenal bone pain. I can only assume that cleanse allowed me to let go of something that was stored in my bones for years and years and years. And that could have landed there from heavy metals such as amalgam, which we have in our teeth. So just giving an idea of, what can come to light at menopause, that we have an opportunity to shift, to really change and transform and rewrite how it's going to be in the future. Because I don't want to be an old lady with broken bones. I don't want to be an old lady in pain. We don't have to do that. We just need to know how. So I'm going to flip to the next slide, Fiona, and ask you to talk a bit about our course, because we love doing this.
Yeah. So Caroline and I have pulled together a labor of love,
Yeah.
in that we want to overcome what we feel is the information gap around about natural menopause. So what we know is menopause is Googled 10 times as much as fertility, but that it only takes up 25% of that space on the internet. So when you Google menopause, you can't find out that much that's interesting. And when you Google natural menopause, you can find out even less. And we know that there's a lack, and for me, I found there was a lack of received wisdom. I didn't find that my friends particularly knew what to do. I didn't find that my mum or my grandmother had anything very useful to share, when my granny was around. And that, I wonder if that is in part because menopause symptoms are changing. And There is a huge study that called the SWAN study in the United States, which compares large cohorts of women they've been asking the same questions since 1918. Not the same women, different cohorts, different through time. And what they're seeing is that women are reporting much more intense menopause symptoms, particularly hot flashes. We're also seeing at the other end of the scale that the age of girls having their first period is getting earlier. And that's coming in from large data studies as well. So something is happening to women's hormones. Now, there may not be one particular reason for that. It can be environmental, it can be social, it can be, you know, pollutants. There's so many things in our lifestyles that have changed. But the thing is that it means the information's not there. And what we want to do is really put the information out there and, you know, not only inform our clients, because we can't work with that many clients. We work one-on-one. You know, that's not enough women. We can reach far more women by putting together this course and group coaching, where we provide the support that we feel women need in menopause, but that we're able to work with more women at once and for a much more affordable price. Yeah. So what we brought together is really what we know works, what we see work in practice, what we see, as Caroline said, the commonalities to be. We always see that a liver detox is essential. We know that the liver is struggling at this age. So that is the first part of our course, is to put in that liver detox, to get the cleanse, so that then the body can start to absorb nutrition and process that estrogen much more efficiently. So we've really brought together our knowledge of nutrition, and that's nourishment, as well as nutritional supplements, homeopathy, and lifestyle protocols. And this is not just for menopause. We're really talking about practices to serve you now in menopause, but for the rest of our lives. These are practices. Menopause is teaching us how to be in this third part of our life. And when we work with that, we get so much knowledge and we support the body, and it's going to serve us into our old ages. So the way that we structured this is that we have 6 seminars or webinars. So that's 1 per week. The course is over a 6-week period. So every week there's a webinar, and each webinar is supported by a course workbook, which has in it self-care exercises, it has recipes, it has discount codes, it has everything that you need for that week. And then we encourage everybody to follow the protocols, to try out the self-care exercises over the week. And everybody comes together on a WhatsApp group where Caroline and I are omnipresent. We're always there to answer questions. And also, you know, what I found was our course participants, we've done this course once, and the course participants were a source of so much information. There was so much being shared and so much support on there. So it was quite a learning opportunity for me, you know, a real opportunity to learn about other people's great information on, for example, things like natural cosmetics. And at the end of the course, when the 6 weeks are over, and you've worked through a sort of health flow, and you slowly move into more hormonally stable, you become more hormonally stable, we then support each participant in creating their own individual plan. So signposting for extra supports they might need, or working out which of the lifestyle hacks or the supplements or the homeopathy they're going to be continuing with. And that's really there, not just, as I said, for now, but for years to come. So it's quite an evolution over a 6-week period for the participants. So what did our participants think? So as I said, we ran the course with 15 women, and over 6 weeks, we asked people about 25 menopause symptoms. Some people saw 40% of those improve, and some people saw 90% of them improve. So it depended on the individual, on how healthy they were when they came into the course, and to some extent about how much they participated in the group exercises and the work, because we appreciate that life can get in the way. So it's really, we provide all the information, and then women can implement this in their own time. You know, people were on the course were traveling, people had job interviews, people had to go and work abroad. Illness, childhood illness, lots of things were coming up, but we make sure that all the information's there for you to take away and work through in your own time. if you can't get through it in the course. And we keep the videos up, available for you to watch, and we keep the WhatsApp group going afterwards as well. So I mean, I don't know what's your favorite quote on that, Caroline? The bottom one. They're anonymous.
They're all great, actually. I mean, I was just reading, because I haven't read all of these. I was just reading, it's so rare to hear women confidently speak of their positive experience pre and post menopause on the all natural approach, such as you two. I wish there were more women sharing on this. And for me, that sentence says so much, not just about us, but the need for, and some of you that are listening in will be, homeopaths and natural health practitioners, for you to get with this too. So we, on this course, I think a third of the women on the course were health practitioners of some sort, and they'll be taking that information. So one of the things that came through for us as we were working with, the women on the course, was these women are ambassadors for menopause. This kind of confidence that came through. And I just wanted to pick up on something that Fiona was saying there, that on week 3 of the course, so I came in on week 4, and what happened on the previous week was that just by chance, a lot of the women in the group had gone through some kind of stress. And they were all different types of stresses. We had little breakout rooms to talk about how the week had been. And they all said, everybody in the room said, I coped with that stress so much better than I would have done previously. And I was like, wow, you've only had 3 weeks of change. And that's, your remedies that we provide, lifestyle changes, making quite simple changes to diet. And yet they all said I coped with stress better. And I was like, wow, that to me, I feel like my work is done. It's amazing. So we obviously, it's great to get good feedback, but to really qualify that as how it was, how it is, how it can be, really is super. So, we get asked who is the course for, and Fiona and I talked about this quite a lot, even today, is that this space could be for women who want to prepare naturally. So I was really surprised when I met my first women pre-menopause, who said, look, we're here. This wasn't on this course. This was in a retreat space. We're here because we want to know how to be. And one of the women, like me, had, chosen a very natural course, and hers was for the whole of her life, because she had a pre-existing medical condition that she knew would get worse through menopause. And she wanted to do the best she could. She wanted to be prepared. So pre-menopause, this could be a space. Perimenopause, I get a lot of women in my Facebook group saying, I'm not sure if I'm in perimenopause yet, but my periods have gone a bit wonky. Get with the program now, because it's so important to lay the foundations, so that you're not hit with some of the symptoms that I was hit with, which was, somebody asked me what were my thyroid symptoms. It was shedding, somebody said in the chat, it was shedding a lot of hair. It was absolute crashes of energy at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was just like, whoa, what is happening to me? I'm a healthy, vibrant, busy woman. What on earth is going on? And that was aged 46, and things have fundamentally changed. I've grown the hair back in with attending to my diet, and there are certain things I put in place. So I just haven't experienced an energy crash like that for a very long time. Now, if I did, I'd know immediately where to go. So these are the kind of things that we want to make sure that women understand is available and can really make huge change. So women who aren't sure where they are, women who've had several courses of IVF, I'm beginning to see how much this impacts women at menopause, and so can create a lot of struggling, and that can manifest in different ways depending on your own health, really. And one of the things that we do on the course is we look at our timelines, our individual timelines, how we arrived at the point we're at now. We all have a different story. And as Fiona said, that can include grief, emotional upset, or maybe physical things. I'm conscious that I wasn't terribly healthy in my 20s. You know, I did an awful lot of things that impacted my liver without going into details. So I needed to do several liver cleanses. I need to look after my liver, and that's on top of a family history of women who had liver problems. I didn't find out that till I was 28, by which time I'd done quite a lot of hard work damaging my liver, I guess. But we can repair, we can make good, and we're here to show you how. So post-menopause, for women who still have exacerbating symptoms. Sorry, my cancer has gone a bit weird. So over to you, Fiona.
So what the course actually gives you are a series of tools so that you can implement those and know how and when to use them. As I mentioned before, we'll be working with detoxification. So detoxification is so important in the modern world. Now, we tend to think of detox as just being our bodies and it being something that you do in January for a week. And Caroline and I talked about the liver detox, which is part of it. But there's also loads of detoxification you can do around your home and your workspace and in what you eat and drink. So we're really looking at the much wider picture of modern toxins and dealing with those. We also really focus in on nourishment, and nourishment much more than diet. I think menopause is a time where you have to, diet is restriction, it's denial, and nourishment is what we need, spiritual nourishment and nourishment from food, so that we feel really well and really cared for. So there are no restrictive diets, and it's a totally different approach to looking at weight loss, because it's about eating what you need for this life stage. We also work a lot around sleep and sleep protocols and relaxation as well. And one of the big things that our participants came in with, the two biggest things were anxiety and sleep. And those were the things that moved for, I think, almost everybody on the course. So they're so crucial, almost the most crucial part of menopause, I feel. Sleep and stress. We also have done a lot of research into the very best nutritional supplements, and we have a small list of absolute mandatories, which are there, not just for now, but for the sort of your whole life, and then more specific nutritional supports for if you have specific symptoms such as hot flashes or achy joints. And we also have put together a unique series of homeopathic remedies which work over the 6-week period, and there are different sets of remedies, and we move together taking those remedies as you go through the course, because they again need to work in a flow and a rhythm. And yeah, they've been pulled together with Caroline and I, really looking at what we know works and what women need. And then at the end of the course, we don't want anybody to be leaving feeling unsupported. So we have that signposting. We talk more in depth about what tests you can find, what sort of practitioners are out there if you need them, and what other supports are available. So that's our sort of aims for the course. And really what we'd ultimately like is the women on the course to be able to spread the word and, just in their peer groups, be able to share what they've learned. And that's really our main objective for the course. So, Caroline, have you got anything else to add to that?
Let me just get my screen back that I was sharing, because I just wanted to. Can you see that? The screen effect, the screen that I'm sharing.
Yeah, now you're
just
back.
Flipped back to this one. Sorry about that jumping cursor. I don't know what was happening there, because we just wanted to talk a little bit about, I didn't get that screen about HRT. It flips straight to what you'll discover. So should I just cover that quickly?
Yeah.
I don't know why my cursor zoomed in like that, but it just did. It was a bit weird. So one of the things that we got asked about as well was, and obviously we often talk about with the course, is what aspect of HRT, is it relevant for you if you're considering HRT? Very much so. Both of us see in practice, women who absolutely can't take HRT because it's contraindicated. So it can be a very, very good space for women in that case. Women who've had a bad reaction to HRT and want to come off it, or trying to come off it anyway, or have had a bad reaction and need to set things right, and haven't felt well since HRT. So it's also a great space for women who are taking HRT but want to optimize their health, because any kind of medication, HRT included, will mean that your body becomes deficient in certain vitamins, minerals, essential nutrients, really, and that you'll need to put those back in. And that's something that's absolutely not covered in mainstream medicine. So if you're taking any other kind of medication, and that's a long-term prescription, sertraline, this type of thing, you need to know what to put back into your body to optimize your health. So it's also a space potentially for women who are going through surgical or chemical menopause. And we talked about those earlier, but, if you're thinking, oh, is this for me? Drop me or Fiona a line. We're really happy to have a chat and talk you through how you could benefit from this course. So the sessions are with both of us. The next course starts Tuesday, the 10th of September, and it goes for 6 weeks to the 15th of October. Each session does get recorded. I mean, we accept, obviously, that, not everybody can make everything all of the time. So they do get recorded, and they're from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., which just about suits women from the other side of the world as well. So if you're really the other side of the world, it might be an early morning call for you, but we've certainly had women joining from all over the world, which is amazing. So there's presentation time plus learning time plus being part of the group, so time for discussion, breakout groups, and question, and maybe in that space friendships forming. So it feels rich to us. Fiona, do you want to just cover this?
Sure. So the course price includes a number of things. So it includes the 6 weeks of homeopathic remedies, which are posted out to you before the course begins, along with instructions of how and when to take them. We give shopping lists of nutritional supplements, and we time those as we go through the course so that they're as and when you need them. And Caroline and I are not, fans of over supplementing, so we keep this quite minimal for the absolute essential supplements. And we also tell you about any lifestyle tools you might need, like body brushing as one of them, and provide whatever discount codes we've got. So between us, we've got a range of discount codes, and we share those every week. As I mentioned before, there's a course workbook that is provided every week. And we do things like at the start of the course, there are 2 questionnaires for you to fill in so that we can track not only you as well as us can track your hormonal symptoms, your menopausal symptoms, but also your hormonal life journey. And we track those at the beginning and the end of the course, and they're incredibly informative for you to know, learn more about yourself, because this is really about you understanding your body and working with it. And as I mentioned, we've got the WhatsApp group going on and lots of Watch Again links as well. So
yes,
yeah,
I just wanted to say, someone's dropped in, that this is about the part of the session today is about talking about the course. But if finance is an issue, we do have payment plans, and if it's really an issue, then do drop me a line, because there is potentially some funding from somebody who enjoyed the course so much that she's prepared to, to perhaps make a grant there. So, never say never. There's such a lot of value and support in the world. So I just wanted to say that, because that really was wonderful when that person mentioned that to me. So let me just stop the share. I think that's possibly the end of
the early bird code, Caroline.
Yeah, I've just popped that into the this is just me being the screen sharing, because I've dropped back into a different,
We've got
a different
early
space.
which
Oh, it's
Caroline's
so
just in the chat.
funny, Zoom, isn't it? I've just put the early bird code in the chat space, and obviously I'll put that into an email tomorrow. Let me just have a quick look at the PowerPoint. It's funny, Zoom sometimes the way it jumps around. So yes, I think we probably said this, that the course price includes 6 weeks worth of homeopathic remedies, shopping lists with discount codes, the course workbook, obviously the WhatsApp space, watch again links for all the webinars, which have 6 months access. So there's plenty of time to watch again, ask questions. And let me just share that last slide. Sorry, this is just me with a couple of screens open. So we'll just share from that slide, hopefully. There we go. Yes, so you can save £50 on the course price with the early bird code. The offer ends midnight on Tuesday the 6th, so a week's time. And then we'll have a payment plan available from the 7th of August. So this is honestly my best offering for a natural menopause. And I know Fiona feels the same. And it's comprehensive with plenty of time to take in information and try things out. So let's just have a quick look and see if we've got any more questions.
Ready at 8 o'clock, but we had one on bloating.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I think, so there's many causes. I could probably list 25 causes of bloating. And one that immediately comes to mind, which I always remember a naturopath friend telling me, she said all women over the age of 50 need to attend to digestive enzymes. So one of the things we talk about on the course, as I've said, is looking at the microbiome, and digestive enzymes are also called prebiotics. So are we including those in our diet in order to be able to digest food efficiently? Because if we're not, that could lead to bloating. Excess estrogen not properly metabolized is another cause of bloating. So there's many causes. Eating our food too fast, eating cold food, there's loads of causes. I don't know, anything you want to add in there?
No, I think you're right. Gut health is so key at menopause. So anybody who has had previous gut issues, such as IBS or constipation or diarrhea that you haven't really dealt with, that will be massively affecting the production of your neurotransmitters and of your estrogen. Your gut actually contains an estrobiome. So you're experiencing bloating, I would look to the gut and really prioritize that as a really important part of your menopause journey, and it will serve you for the rest of your life. Such a great investment in yourself and time, and working out what you need to take out those food sensitivities will really serve you forever. So I would encourage you to look to the gut.
Yeah, and I would say that somebody's just asked me about is this course suitable for post-menopause? I would say absolutely yes, because it depends on if you have menopausal symptoms in the and you are post-menopause, then you're going to find out why that's happening and how best to support yourself. So I think absolutely a space for post-menopause. And as I said, I've found, for myself, that I've learned new stuff, which is fascinating. Just going to see if there's any more questions in here. I'm just flipping through the
Someone does
through the questions. Yeah.
My reply is a bit not very well formatted, but maca is primarily, it's great for raising testosterone. So for example, in the case I talked to the woman who had very low testosterone levels, that was appropriate for her. But it's not really a catch-all. It's not something that works for everybody. And in fact, if you are already cortisone high and quite stressed, then it's going to make you feel quite edgy. So yeah, just not for everybody. These herbs and adaptogens can be very potent. So it's good to know what your symptoms are and then find the appropriate one for that.
I'd absolutely echo that about maca. I mean, it is a fantastic boost for fertility. It can be a fantastic boost for energy. But if you're, if your cortisol and your stress is high, what I see in women is it creates hot flushes normally. So you get that kind of spike at 3 a.m. It's an amazing superfood, but needs to be used appropriately. And there are others that are far more useful, like ashwagandha, rhodiola. So is gaining weight around the middle due to low estrogen or low progesterone? Primarily low estrogen. The vast majority of us need to increase our progesterone. But as Fiona said earlier, the stress hormones still really what's needed to make the hormones. We still need estrogen and progesterone. And someone else says about so I've just got to scroll through the chat box. It's not always easiest to do. All of my symptoms have got so much worse: ADD, autism, ME, CFS. Life is a struggle. So I would say, Tracy, underneath that, there's a really strong message to remineralize. So there are other aspects there that would be supportive, but remineralizing. So what's the pathway to us remineralizing? And it's often improving the gut health. So, we often come back to the same conversations that we've been sharing, that, working with foods which create, the capacity for better absorption is really fundamental. So look, we're just past 8 o'clock, so we're going to finish for today. We could talk about menopause. We've got a 6-week course. We could talk about it for far longer. And I think one of the things that is a constant is new information coming into the space, and that we are looking outwards, and we are open-minded to the changes that need to be made. So thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it. And someone's asked about medicinal mushrooms. Yes, possibly, but wouldn't be first on my list, would be what I'd say.
Yeah, I'll just get one last one. Someone's asked about cleansing the contraceptive pill. And yes, absolutely. That often impacts your hormonal production. And then it really catches you out of menopause. And one of the great ways to do that is with homeopathy. And you can reset your hormonal balance absolutely beautifully. So if you have had long-term contraceptive use, that is something that I would encourage you to speak to a homeopath about and ask about. Detox therapy, or it's called tautopathy as well.
And I'd also actually say it doesn't necessarily need to be long term. If you've used the pill for a short period of time and it's aggravated in some way, one of my questions when I'm working with women is okay, so you had the pill, how was the pill for you? And so many women will say, I felt out of sort and I gained weight. And I'm like, so what are you going to do at menopause? You're going to feel out of sorts and you're going to gain weight, because that synthetic hormone needs to be cleared from the system. And it's not difficult to do. We just need to know how. And there are so few spaces where this is being shared. So thank you so much for joining us. And any extras we'll try and answer tomorrow.
All so much for your time and fantastic questions. Thank you all for being so engaged. We really hope to see some of you, and please do drop us a line if there's anything else you need. And spread the word. Natural menopause, it is a real thing. Really fantastic.
Thank you.
Right, bye everybody.
Bye.